Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a second here to talk about Ohm's law and then kind of how the three variables within Ohm's law relates to one another. So before we even get into some Ohm's law examples, I want to take a second to show you a little analogy that kind of helps me to think about it. Um, so when we're talking about circuits, and this kind of relates to today's lesson and to previous lessons where we were talking about Ohm's law, but we have Ohm's law, which is V equals I R. All right, now remember V is voltage, I is current, and then R is resistance. So I have an analogy that kind of shows you how these all relate to one another within a circuit, okay, and kind of how it affects one another. So I use this water system analogy. I like it because all of us have kind of a general understanding of how water comes into our homes. So what we have is, if we're talking about water within the city of St. Michael, right, you have a water tower here, okay? The way we're going to relate that to electricity is we're going to consider that water tower our battery. Okay, the only way you can get water into your house is if we have a water tower. Now, the only way you can get electricity or charge to flow through a circuit is if you have a battery, right? Well, what the water tower does is you have all of this water sitting up here in the water tower, and that's creating a whole bunch of pressure in the downward direction due to gravity. So it's creating this downward pressure, and then that pressure is causing pressure in the pipes, causing it to flow. Okay? Well, a similar thing happens when we're talking about electricity. When you're talking about electricity, the only difference is now we're talking about, I call it something I like to call electrical pressure. All right, or voltage. Okay, so that's what you can think of voltage as, is this electrical pressure. All right, and this electrical pressure is what causes a flow of current. All right, so when we're talking about water, well, it's water that flows. When you're talking about electricity, it is current that flows. All right, so current flows through there, and you can just think of that as a flow of, oh, that was kind of close. Let's try that again. Flow of charge. Okay. And then finally, so that's what happens when we're talking about water, we have that electrical pressure built up, and then we have this water that ends up flowing into your home. Okay. And then when it gets into your home, it reaches something like your shower, or it reaches something like your toilet or your sink or something like that. And so we'll just point to this and we'll just call that, we'll say that's a shower. All right. And then when we're talking electricity, something like that, something like your shower or your sink or something like that, that would be considered a resistor. Okay. And when we're talking in electricity, a resistor might be something like a motor, or it might be something like a light bulb. Okay, so it's anything that uses electricity. So when we were talking with the water analogy, it's something that uses water. Electricity, it's something that uses electricity. And what that resistor does is it slows. Oh, I'm going to run out of room here. Let's try this again. Okay, what that resistor does is it slows current. Right? And the higher the resistance is, the slower the current is going to be. Right? We can also relate that into the size of the pipes. If you notice here, the size of the pipes here are different sizes. So like over here towards the water tower, these pipes over here are a lot bigger, and the pipes closer to your house are a lot smaller. All right, so the pipes that are closer here over next to the water tower, those are going to be very low resistance. So the current's going to be very high. Um, so the water is going to be flowing very fast. Right? If you're thinking electricity, and we think of each of these pipes as wires, right? A bigger wire is going to mean less resistance, so current can flow a lot faster. And then the exact opposite is true over by the house where we have um, smaller pipes. Smaller pipes would mean a higher resistance, right? So current is going to be flowing very slowly, right? So by the time the water gets into your house, the water's flowing a lot slower than when it was next to the water tower. Okay. So, and then finally, the last step of this would just be once it leaves, you know, to complete this analogy, water leaves into the sewer pipe. Eventually, that water gets put back into the water cycle and then filtered out either by Mother Nature or some sort of filtration plant. And then eventually we get water that comes back in from the ground. No, I'm not saying that you drink sewage. It gets cleaned out somehow, I promise you. Okay. And then what I want to do next is I'm just going to go over a couple examples of Ohm's law, just for those of you who maybe are struggling a little bit more figuring out one of these problems. So I'm just going to take a look at this here. Maybe I can. Okay, 1 second. All right, so apparently my controls in the bottom left-hand corner here are not wanting to work with me. So I will have to make a second video showing you how to do some of the Ohm's Law examples. Thank you. Have a great day.